The doors slammed shut behind her. Elira spun around and pounded against the ironwood panels as the bolt dropped into place from the inside. The sound cut through the roar of the blizzard like a verdict. "Open it," she shouted, her voice ripped apart by the wind. "Please." Laughter echoed faintly from within the great hall of Frostfall. Snow struck her face in sharp sheets. Within seconds, her thin linen dress clung to her skin. The courtyard stretched before her, already buried beneath thick white drifts. The outer frost cellar stood beyond the archway, half hidden by blowing snow. She knew then. There had never been any ceremonial ice wine. Vara Thorn's smile flashed in her mind, cool, poised, satisfied. "Fetch it yourself," Vara had said before the entire feast. "Or are you too fragile for simple tasks?" Inside, the pack celebrated the winter ascension feast. Fires roared. Warriors drank. Songs echoed beneath the vaulted beams. Survival. Strength. Unity. Outside, Elira staggered forward into the storm alone. The wind shoved her sideways. Snow swallowed her ankles. Her fingers were already stiff. She forced herself toward the cellar door, hope flickering despite everything. When she reached it, she clawed at the handle. Locked. She pulled again. Locked. "No," she whispered. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Ice clung to her lashes. She leaned her forehead against the wood and laughed weakly. Of course. The truth settled in her bones. This was execution disguised as obedience. The bitter herbs in her meals over the past 2 years suddenly made sense. The heaviness in her blood. The way her wolf never answered when she called. Vara had been weakening her slowly, carefully. Elira turned back toward the hall. The courtyard was already blurring white. She tried to shift. Nothing. No spark. No heat. No answering growl beneath her ribs. "Please," she whispered to the hollow place inside her. "Not now." The wind answered instead. Inside the hall, Alpha Rhyland Frost raised his goblet. "To another winter conquered," he declared, voice carrying easily over the crowd. The pack roared approval. Vara stood at his right, elegant in deep blue silk, chin lifted. She leaned close and murmured, "Your Omega servant is proving disappointingly slow." Rhyland barely glanced at her. "She will return." "If she survives the storm," Vara replied lightly. He paused. "What?" Vara's lips curved. "Surely she can handle a short walk." A flicker of irritation passed through him. Why was she sent alone? "Because she is an Omega," Vara said softly, as if explaining something obvious. "And Omegas obey." He drank from his goblet, but something twisted low in his chest. Outside, Elira stumbled and fell hard. Snow rushed into her mouth. She coughed, pushing herself upright. Her hands burned, then went numb. She tried to crawl toward the hall doors. The blizzard swallowed everything. Her thoughts fractured. Her mother's face surfaced in memory, soft brown eyes, trembling hands the night soldiers dragged her away. "Survive," her mother had whispered. "No matter what they say about me, survive." Elira's teeth chattered violently. "I'm trying," she breathed. Inside the hall, laughter spiked again. Rhyland's wolf stirred. A sharp, violent snarl slammed through his mind. "Danger." He stiffened. The goblet slipped from his fingers and shattered against stone. The hall quieted instantly. "Alpha?" Vara asked, frowning. He didn't answer. His pulse thundered. His wolf paced inside him, frantic. "Find her." Without another word, Rhyland strode toward the doors. Vara grabbed his arm. "Rhyland, you cannot mean to." He shook her off. "Who else is outside?" "No one." The single word struck like a blow. He threw the doors open. The storm hit him full force. Warriors gasped as snow blasted into the hall. Rhyland stepped into the blizzard without hesitation. "Elira," he called. The wind tried to rip the name away. He moved fast, boots crunching through deep drifts. His wolf guided him more than sight did. There, a shape near the arch. He dropped to his knees beside her. Elira lay half-buried, lips blue, lashes frozen together. Her chest barely moved. Rhyland's hands shook as he lifted her. She weighed almost nothing. "Stay with me," he ordered fiercely. Her eyes fluttered open just enough to see him. For a split second, something sparked between them. Recognition. Then her head fell back. Rhyland tore off his cloak and wrapped it around her, pulling her against his chest. He rose and carried her toward the hall. The doors flew open at his approach. Silence crushed the room as he entered, snow clinging to his dark hair, fury blazing in his eyes. "Summon the healers," he commanded. No one moved. "Now!" The spell broke. He strode past the tables, past stunned warriors, past Vara's pale face, and headed straight for his private chambers. Vara followed. "Rhyland, you are overreacting." He turned so abruptly she stopped mid-step. "Overreacting?" His voice was deadly quiet. "She was left to die." "She is an Omega," Vara snapped, composure cracking. "They are replaceable." The room went colder than the storm outside. Rhyland's gaze hardened into something lethal. "Say that again." Vara lifted her chin but did not repeat it. He carried Elira into his chambers and laid her on the bed. Healers rushed in behind him. Warm blankets. Heated stones. "Check her pulse," he barked. One healer carefully peeled back the frozen fabric of Elira's dress. A hiss filled the room. Bruises. Old and new. Thin scars crossing her back. Burn marks near her wrists. Rhyland's hands curled into fists. "How long?" he demanded. The healer swallowed. "These injuries are not recent, Alpha. And there is residue in her bloodstream, wolf-suppressing herbs. Strong ones." The world narrowed. "She cannot shift," he asked. "No." Elira stirred weakly. A broken whisper escaped her lips. "Don't tell, please." Rhyland leaned closer. "Tell what?" Her eyes opened, unfocused. Fear filled them instantly when she realized where she was. "I didn't fail," she said hoarsely. "I went to the cellar. It was locked. I tried." "You were never meant to succeed," he replied, voice rough. Her gaze darted toward the door as if expecting punishment. "Who did this?" he asked. She hesitated. "If you speak," he said firmly, "no harm will touch you again." "I swear it." Her lips trembled. "Vara," she whispered. The name fell like a blade. Rhyland felt it then, clear and undeniable. The bond. It snapped into place in his chest like iron locking with iron. "Mate." The word roared through him. He stared at the fragile girl beneath his hands, at the scars carved into her skin, at the fear etched into her eyes. Vara had not tried to kill an Omega. She had tried to kill his Luna. Rhyland rose slowly. Outside his chamber doors, the feast murmured in uneasy confusion. He walked to the entrance and threw it open. "Send word," he ordered the nearest guard, voice echoing down the corridor. At dawn, the entire pack assembles in the courtyard. The guard swallowed. "For what purpose, Alpha?" Rhyland's gaze turned glacial. "For judgment." Dawn came sharp and merciless. The storm had calmed, but the courtyard still bore the scars of the night. Snow drifted high against the walls, and the wind carried a bitter chill. The entire Frostfall pack stood gathered beneath the pale winter sky, warriors forming a wide ring around the central stone dais. Rhyland stood at its center. Vara Thorn stood opposite him, dressed impeccably despite the cold, her expression carved from pride and defiance. Elira remained inside under guard and warmth, too weak to stand, but conscious enough to know what was happening. Rhyland's voice carried easily across the silence. Last night, an Omega was sent into a blizzard without protection. The courtyard doors were bolted behind her. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. He continued, "She would have died." Vara's jaw tightened. "You exaggerate." Rhyland did not look at her. Healers confirmed wolf-suppressing herbs in her system. Long-term administration. A collective intake of breath. Vara's eyes flashed. "You would believe the word of a servant over your beta?" Rhyland's gaze snapped to hers. "I believe evidence." He gestured. The head healer stepped forward. The girl's body shows repeated injuries consistent with abuse over an extended period. The herbs were mixed carefully into food. The dosage was deliberate. Vara laughed lightly. "Anyone could have done that." "Anyone?" Rhyland repeated. He motioned again. Two kitchen staff stepped forward, trembling. "We were ordered," one of them said, eyes downcast. Beta Vara provided the herbs. We were told it was for discipline. Gasps spread. Vara's composure fractured. You lie to save yourselves. Rhyland stepped closer to her. Did you order the courtyard door sealed? She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. A guard came forward reluctantly. I bolted the doors, Alpha. On Beta Vara's command. The silence that followed was absolute. Vara's shoulders squared. And if I did? An Omega must know her place. She was becoming noticed. Noticed? Ryland's voice was low and dangerous. You looked at her, Vara snapped. You defended her once. You disrupted the order for a servant. I protected our future. You attempted murder, he said evenly. She is nothing, Vara shouted. A weak Omega with no family, no rank. She is my mate. The words struck like thunder. Shock rippled across every face. Vara stared at him as if he had struck her. That is impossible. It is not, he replied. The air shifted. Wolves felt it, the undercurrent of power in his voice. Rhyland turned to the gathered pack. Strength does not lie in cruelty. It lies in protection. Last night, that protection failed. He faced Vara again. You abused your authority. You poisoned a member of this pack. You attempted execution without trial. Vara's voice dropped, turning cold and venomous. If you do this, you fracture alliances. My father will not stand idle. Rhyland did not hesitate. Your rank as Beta is stripped, effective immediately. A roar of shock. You will be confined pending full inquiry. If further crimes are confirmed, exile will follow. Guards stepped forward. Vara's face went pale, then livid. You would choose a broken Omega over political stability? Ryland's eyes burned. I choose justice. As guards seized her arms, she leaned toward him and whispered, You have just invited war. He did not flinch. Then let them come. Hours later, a raven arrived. The message bore the seal of Black Hollow Dominion. Rhyland read it once, then aloud before his council. Reinstate Beta Vara Thorn. Dissolve the false mate claim. Deliver the Omega known as Elira into our custody. Failure to comply within 7 days will result in economic sanctions and military retaliation. A final line was etched beneath. Her mother remains under our protection. Elira's mother. The council erupted. They threaten war, Gamma Torin growled. They hold leverage, another added. Rhyland folded the message calmly. They hold a hostage. He dismissed the council and returned to his chambers. Elira was awake, propped against pillows. Color had returned faintly to her cheeks, though exhaustion still lined her face. She studied his expression immediately. They responded. Yes, they have my mother. He did not lie. Yes. Her fingers tightened in the blanket. This is my fault. He crossed the room in 3 strides. No. If I had endured quietly. You endured for 2 years, he interrupted sharply. You survived poisoning and abuse. You owe no one further silence. Tears welled in her eyes. They will kill her. Not if I reach her first. She stared at him. You would risk war for me? For you, he said steadily, I would risk everything. Silence lingered, heavy with unspoken truth. What will you do? She asked. Rhyland's voice lowered. Black Hollow is not united. Their alpha is aging. Their factions compete. If we expose their corruption, their allies will fracture. And my mother? He held her gaze. We extract her before they realize we've moved. Elira's breath caught. That is suicide. It is strategy. That night, Rhyland met secretly with envoys from Silverbrook and Ember Ridge. You know Garrick Vale's rule, Rhyland told them. Forced labor. Trade manipulation. Suppression herbs. The Silverbrook Alpha nodded grimly. We have suspected. I have evidence, Rhyland said. And a hostage to retrieve. War will spread, Ember Ridge warned. Not if Black Hollow collapses from within. After long deliberation, both packs agreed to lend covert support, 20 warriors each to guard Frostfall's borders while Rhyland's elite unit moved unseen. Back in Black Hollow territory, Elira's mother sat in a stone cell beneath the fortress. She lifted her head when footsteps approached. The door swung open, not to Garrick's guards, but to masked warriors bearing Frostfall insignia. Gamma Torin knelt before her. "We are here to take you home." She stared in disbelief. "Elira? She lives." Tears streamed down her face as he cut her chains. The escape was not clean. Alarms rang. Steel clashed. Snow erupted under pounding boots. Torin fought through 2 guards before reaching the treeline. An arrow grazed his shoulder, but he did not slow. Behind them, chaos erupted within Black Hollow's walls as rival factions accused one another of failure. By dawn, they had crossed into Frostfall territory. When Rhyland entered his chambers and saw Elira's mother standing there, wrapped in blankets and alive, Elira broke down. She ran, still weak, into her mother's arms. "I thought I lost you," Elira sobbed. "I told you to survive," her mother whispered. "You did more than that." Rhyland watched quietly. Outside, another raven arrived. Black Hollow's message this time was different. Negotiation. Internal unrest had exploded. Allies withdrew support after leaked evidence of corruption spread. Alpha Vale offered truce, no reinstatement of Vara, no demands for Elira, only mutual non-aggression. The threat had fractured. But the shift inside Frostfall had only begun. 2 months later, the courtyard looked different. Where Elira had nearly died, lanterns now glowed warmly against carved stone. The Omega Circle stood gathered beside warriors and elders alike. Rhyland faced the pack once more. From this day forward, he declared, no rank shields abuse. An Omega Council will advise directly to the Alpha seat. Sanctuary will be granted to those fleeing cruelty. Some wolves shifted uneasily. Others nodded. Elira stood beside him, no longer fragile, no longer shrinking. Her wolf had returned fully, stronger than before, silver and luminous beneath the winter sun. Vara had been exiled weeks prior, stripped of title and protection. Justice had not been quiet, but it had been done. Rhyland turned to Elira as twilight deepened. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. She looked around the courtyard, the place of her near death now transformed into a place of light. "Yes," she said. And the claiming ceremony began. The night of the winter solstice arrived beneath a sky washed clean and silver. Torches lined the courtyard walls, their flames steady against the cold. Snow fell softly now, no longer violent, no longer cruel. The very place where Elira had nearly frozen to death stood transformed, garlands of frost-bloom flowers draped across stone arches, lanterns casting warm light over gathered faces. The entire Frostfall pack stood assembled. Not in fear, in witness. Elira stepped forward slowly. She wore white trimmed in silver thread, the fabric simple but strong, chosen by her own hand. No heavy jewels. No excess. Only a thin circlet of woven winter steel resting against her dark hair. Her mother stood at the front of the Omega Circle, eyes shining with pride. Rhyland waited at the center of the courtyard, dressed in ceremonial black, the Frostfall crest fastened at his shoulder. When his gaze found Elira's, something ancient and steady passed between them. Not possession. Recognition. The murmurs faded. Rhyland's voice carried clearly. 2 months ago, this courtyard was a place of silence and injustice. His eyes moved over the gathered wolves. Tonight, it becomes a place of oath. He turned to Elira. "Do you stand here of your own will?" Elira's voice did not tremble. "I do. Do you accept the bond freely?" She met his gaze. Freely. A low hum rippled through the pack, the pulse of wolves sensing the truth in her words. Rhyland stepped closer. Close enough that only she could hear his next words. "If at any moment you wish to step back, you may." Her lips curved faintly. "You already carried me out of the storm. I will not step back now." Emotion flickered across his face, quick, unguarded. He turned to the gathered pack. "Let it be known. Elira Vale stands as my mate and Luna of Frostfall. Not by dominance. Not by decree. But by bond." The wind stirred. Elira felt it then, the warmth beneath her skin that had been absent for so long. The wolf that had once been muted by poison stirred fully awake, strong and fierce. Rhyland lifted his hand gently to her cheek. The claiming bite was not savage. It was deliberate. He leaned forward and marked her shoulder. Power surged outward like a wave. Elira gasped as the bond sealed completely. Heat flooded her veins, washing away the last ghost of suppression. Her wolf rose in her mind, sleek silver, radiant, proud. She did not collapse. She stood taller. A howl rose from Rhyland's chest, deep and commanding. One by one, the pack joined him. The sound echoed across Frostfall territory, rolling over snow and stone like a declaration. Elira closed her eyes and let her own howl join theirs. For the first time in years, it rang clear. When silence returned, she opened her eyes and saw something she had never seen directed at her before. Respect. Rhyland stepped beside her, not in front. The gesture was subtle. It changed everything. Later, the feast resumed inside the great hall, but this time Elira did not serve at the edges of the room. She sat beside Rhyland at the central table. Not behind. Beside. Warriors approached with nods of acknowledgement. Elders bowed their heads slightly. Even those who had once turned away from her gaze now met it directly. Her mother leaned close at one point and whispered, "You did not just survive. You transformed this place." Elira squeezed her hand. "We did." Across the hall, a young Omega girl watched her with wide eyes. Elira caught the look. Hope. That was new. Midway through the celebration, Rhyland stood once more, raising his goblet. "There is more than ceremony tonight," he said. "Reform requires vigilance. Justice requires participation." He gestured toward the gathered Omegas. "The Omega Circle will meet monthly within these walls. Any grievance may be brought forward without fear." A warrior spoke from the crowd. "And if someone defies this?" Rhyland's expression sharpened. "They will answer to me." There was no doubt in his voice. The hall accepted it. As the evening deepened, Elira stepped outside briefly for air. Snow drifted lightly, settling against the courtyard stones. She walked to the exact spot where she had fallen weeks before. Rhyland followed quietly. "You don't have to stand here," he said. "I want to." She looked down at the stone beneath her boots. "I remember thinking no one would come." His jaw tightened. "I should have known sooner. You came when it mattered." He stepped closer. "I did not see what was happening inside my own walls. And now you do." The wind brushed gently around them. She turned to him. "The reforms will anger some." "They already have," he replied. "And if another challenge rises?" His gaze did not waver. "Then we face it together." She searched his face, not for dominance, not for control, but for partnership. She found it. "I don't want to become a symbol only," she said quietly. "I want to work. To change things that allowed this to happen." "You will," he said. "You already have." Inside the hall, music swelled again. Elira took a slow breath of cold air and felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. Peace. Not fragile. Earned. Rhyland extended his hand. "Come back inside, Luna." She placed her hand in his. They returned to the hall not as Alpha and rescued Omega, but as leaders. The next morning, Frostfall awoke under a clear sky. Messengers rode outward carrying news, not of war, but of reform. Silverbrook formally recognized Elira as Luna. Ember Ridge sent gifts. Even distant territories took note. Frostfall had changed. Weeks later, reports confirmed Black Hollow's internal restructuring. Garrick Vale's power had weakened. New leadership promised transparency. The ripple effect had begun. Change, Elira realized, did not roar like a storm. It spread like thawing ice, one crack at a time. That evening, as lanterns lit the courtyard once more, she stood before the Omega Circle for the first official gathering. A young Omega stepped forward hesitantly. "What if speaking brings retaliation?" Elira answered steadily. "It will not. Not anymore. And if someone doesn't believe us, then they answer to the Alpha seat." Murmurs of relief passed through the group. Her mother stood beside her, not as a victim, but as an advisor. Rhyland watched from a distance, not interfering. This was her space now. Later, when they were alone again, he asked quietly, "Are you overwhelmed?" She smiled faintly. "No." He studied her. "You're different," he observed. "I am no longer afraid." He nodded once. "Good." She stepped closer. And you, he considered. I was raised to believe strength meant command. You reminded me it means protection. She touched his hand lightly. Then we both learned. The winter moon rose high above Frostfall, bathing the territory in silver light. Where there had once been cruelty and silence, there was now vigilance and voice. Elira looked out over the land she nearly died within. It no longer felt like a prison. It felt like responsibility. And this was only the beginning. If you felt the power of Elira's rise and the transformation of Frostfall, don't forget to like this story, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss the next chapter of strength, justice, and destiny. Because in Frostfall, winter no longer belongs to the cruel. It belongs to those who endure and change it.